has to be that rich. And the whole CIA argument sort of bugs me, because the CIA works both ways. I mean, sometimes the CIA is, the CIA isn't like a bunch of guys who are like, oh yeah, I'm rich and working for the richest men in the world, I'm going to do what the richest men in the world want. I mean, these are regular people in a way too, with real lives. And yeah, they're for the corporations, they're for a lot of things, they have their own personal interests and all that kind of crap. But sometimes the CIA actually comes to the rescue and says the truth and tells people the truth. Tells government the truth. So, I can't, CIA isn't exactly, I don't know how to put this one. I mean, they're also another thing that's being manipulated. They're not the manipulator, they're being manipulated. And the CIA was directed, okay? They were told, give us a report, but don't give us foundation documents, don't give us commentary on the credibility of these witnesses, don't give us, because they knew the CIA couldn't do it honestly otherwise, that they couldn't give them an honest report. They wouldn't say what they wanted to hear if they did include their commentary. So I don't even think the CIA was necessarily for this whole involvement or even getting into the war. They were just directed to manufacture the evidence.
Oh, spot on. Yeah, no, I don't. I guess I got a little off track there, but yeah, spot on, Gary. There's a guy, I'm trying to think of his name, and I can't remember his name. He was one of the senior guys at CIA under George Tenet. When they were trying to put the case together for going to war, and he was an old-time CIA guy. I mean, he'd been there like 20, 30 years. And he opposed this, and from the, he's been, I'm sorry I can't remember this guy's name, but he's been on a number of, internet talk shows like Alex Jones and Spiral Into It. I apologize for not being able to remember his name, but he opposed this with all the resources that were available to him, and to hear him describe it, he was in good and broad company. There were a lot of people at the CIA who knew that that the whole pretense for going to war was bullshit, and they tried to stop it. But unfortunately, George Tenet was a company man, and anybody who's worked for a large corporation knows when your boss tells you to put out a report that supports his line of reasoning, that's what you do. But yeah, I agree. It's the sword cuts both ways.
Yeah, I mean, it's the politics that wins at the end, I mean, that's the problem. I mean, the politics is, whatever the dominant politics is, that's going to win. So, I mean, unfortunately. So if the Republicans have the power, they're going to do the Republican thing, and that's just the way it is. And same thing with the Democrats and whatever. They're going to play their games. Well, I mean, I can't even say the Democrats anymore because they don't exist. But whatever, the moderates, or whatever that other party is, it's not Labor. But that was part of the whole thing with the war too, which was kind of slimy, is the British were using American intelligence and the Americans were using British intelligence to create a layer of separation, so they didn't have to take account for the credibility of this information. They could just say, well, this is what the British Secret Service has told us, and then the British were doing the same. This is what the American CIA says. And it was just such a way to get around accountability.
Yeah, I remember that. And one of the best illustrations of the administration's cherry picking with information was that their senior security advisor at the time, Richard Clark, was telling them no Al-Qaeda in Iraq, no yellow cake in Africa, and repeating it over and over again. But he was silenced. The guy was, had been doing his job for 25 years, very good at it, but they turned their back on him. He was very inconvenient at the time.
There's just so many lies that were just so preposterous. They kept saying that the Iraqis aren't letting us inspect, and the inspectors are saying, yes, they are. We've inspected. We're inspecting every week. We're going into these buildings and looking at this stuff, and we're inspecting. I mean, it was just so some of the lies were just so preposterous. It was just like, well, what the fuck? What buildings have we not been allowed to access? And they could never provide you any of that. They could never say, oh no, they never let us into this warehouse. No, we got into every building we wanted to get into. And it was just such a pile of crap.
Yeah, this might be getting away from the subject at hand a little bit, but I was thinking about the British, and again, I'm going to come back to Lyndon LaRouche. I'm probably going to sound like a fanboy here, but believe me, I'm not. I think the guy's a crank. But one of his major arguments is that the British have basically fucked up the geopolitical system for the last, 5 centuries, and continue to do so with evil intent. And obviously I discard all that as just kind of the ravings of a lunatic crank, but it did get me to thinking, well, if you look at what has come in their wake, they did do a fair amount of damage. I mean, you look at the Sykes-Picot Treaty following World War I, and you look at the artificial creation of Iraq, which has turned out to be pretty much a clusterfuck from day one that we're still dealing with out into the indefinite future. You look at India. Oh my God! I mean, India is the big one. If Iran doesn't launch missiles into Tel Aviv, and if Israel doesn't nuke Iran, I think Christopher Hitchens was the person who pointed this out. First person I've heard pointed out. The cause of the next Third World War will likely be between Pakistan and India, and that was largely, if you're looking for the genesis of that, the creation of those two countries, and those two political systems, and that division, that was largely at the hands of the British Empire. So,
yeah, well, not everything they did was wrong, though. I mean, obviously it was wrong for the way they did the colony thing, or whatever you call that empire thing, the ownership thing. But the fact is that where would India be if it hadn't been educated by the British? So I mean, that's not all bad, I don't think, and I don't think that's the reason. I mean, I don't think that's the core problem. I just think the core problem is you got a huge population that doesn't have a real political heritage. That didn't do the Constitution thing. But it's sort of there. I mean, it's not like it's completely broken. So, but yeah, the hostilities are. There's so many diverse populations, and there's just such animosity between people. I mean, these are people that they'll throw gasoline on you and light you on fire. I mean, they're tough motherfuckers when it comes to, you don't want to get in a fight with these bastards. So yeah, it can get real messy if they got nuclear bombs to go hurling at each other. And so it's not a good situation, I agree, but I'm not going to blame the British. I don't know where they would be if it wasn't for the British. Where the fuck would India be if the British never were there? I mean, it might not be too pretty a place. And as for Iraq, I think Iraq was doing pretty damn good, actually, even under nutty old Hussein. When you think of where they were as a Muslim nation, they were rather secular and kind of civilized. So, it wasn't all bad until we decided to throw it all away.
Right. That's the perspective we have now. Looking back as a historical event. You're right. They would have maintained a balance in the area. They were boxed in. We were watching their every move. So even though he was a not so benevolent a ruler, he maintained stability in that region. They were good for us.
Yeah, and the guy wore a suit.
Wait a second.
You know what I mean? I mean, he didn't run around babbling incoherent Ayatollah crazy shit.
100,000 fucking Kurdish people.
Yeah, well, Kurdish people, that's right. Kurdish people living in his fucking country. So fuck you old hacks, okay? And they didn't gas 100,000, it was 10,000, but whatever. You want to argue that politics over and over and over again, then we might as well declare the American colonies illegitimate and give it back to the Native Americans, and then you can go live in, wherever, somewhere in Europe.
I really hate that people have become so separated.
Well, they haven't become separated. They've always been fucking separated. I mean, the Mohicans and the Apaches didn't think much of each other before we even came here with our silly ideas of war. They were doing pretty good at killing each other without us. People kill each other. They've been doing it since, we were salamanders.
Well, we came from the same place, we just grew different because people were so separated geographically. Different
Yes,
just
I
because
know.
their
Well, I've made
environment.
that same argument that's really quite ironic when you think about it, because it's like a little branch of the human race separated out of Europe. They go across a little land bridge. They go to North America. Okay, and so 40,000 years later, we go across the ocean and slaughter what are basically our great 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 grandnephews. I mean, it's kind of silly.
Cannibalism.
Exactly.
Family, but we treat each other like enemies.
Well, we are not made for diversity. We are made to be nepotistic. We're made to be comfortable with to have a comfortable environment, to adapt to an environment, to become addicted. That's our nature, is addiction. And we become addicted to our thing, our stuff, what we like to eat, what we like to look at, what we like to fuck, and that's how we look at the world. And anything that's different is a threat to that.
Yeah, Ramey, I see, Ramey, you said, I saw your text down there. You said, yeah, the Iran-Iraq war for how many years was a very stable thing. What the F? Well, what I meant was Iraq, they provided hegemony for our interests over there. And they provided a balance for our interests. I mean, what do you think would happen? Well, look what's happening now. Iran is recruiting a lot of people and infiltrating Iraq because of the enmity that's over there for the U.S. now, because we've invaded. My point is that was the balance in the context of our interest over there and our hegemony in that region. That was the balance.
Well, we didn't need to do that to have the balance. So we could have the balance without financing both sides of that stupid war. That was really dumb. I mean, it kept them distracted, yes, but we didn't need to distract them. I mean, Iran was also becoming more progressive too before that war. The Ayatollah was old and dying and out of politics pretty much. Iran's politics was getting less severe. So, I mean, that was not a good war for us, in my opinion. I mean, yeah, it kept both countries distracted, but it was not. I don't think it was good. But Remy, you're full of shit anyway. I mean, look, addiction is not a metaphor only, Remy. It's sort of an explicit reality. We are addictive by nature. We get addicted to gambling, or we get addicted to sex, or we get addicted to food, I mean, it's all over the fucking place. It's not just a metaphor. Well, I'm just saying, you can say it's my metaphor, yeah. But the point is, it's accurate. It's an accurate, explicit, literal fact also.
Yeah, just a quick little interjection
Yeah,
here. Yeah, go ahead, Spaz. Sorry.
Oh no, I was just going to say the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
All right. Well, that's better than what I was going to say. What Gary was talking about just reminded me of this, about the nature of addiction and that we're addictive creatures. It reminded me of a quote from Terence McKenna. He said that human beings have the capacity to become addicted to almost anything, to their mate, to money, to their car, their house, shopping, maybe an inconsequential aside of a point.